Hi, friends.
Hi, friends.
We're back. It's episode 101 of the Brunch and Judge.
Unfortunately, there are no Dalmatians. So.
There are no Dalmatians. I really should have found just like a random Dalmatian somewhere just to like throw in, but
Right.
here we are. Well, we are your hosts. I'm April.
And I'm Claire.
And this week we are talking Unsolved Mysteries.
Yes.
No, that's Twilight Zone.
That's Twilight Zone.
It's because, so last night, random aside, we were watching an old episode of Jeopardy because we have a whole channel of it, so why not?
Yes, I know, right?
And there's a whole category of like the Twilight Zone stuff, so it got stuck in my head.
You just had that in your head.
It's in my head. I'm so sorry. Anyway, so this week I go first, and I know, Claire, you are dying to know what the best, like when I think Unsolved Mystery, like what is the thing that comes to mind? And I'm talking like old school Robert Stack TV show Unsolved Mystery.
Oh, right.
Like there are certain ones that just like stay with you. And one of the ones that always stuck with me was the Unsolved Mystery of the Mary Celeste.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
I like
definitely.
I love so much that that Unsolved Mysteries does reenactments of these things because you're just like, what's happening? And it's like, what the hell? It's like, what in God's name? For some reason, as like, I don't know, a 10-year-old maybe, I watched that episode and it stayed. And it stayed with me in a way that I'm like, where did they go?
They just disappeared.
So, for those who don't know, because maybe you're not insane like me and obsess over weird old episodes of Unsolved Mysteries, the Mary Celeste was a Canadian-built brigantine merchant ship. I don't know what that means. It's a boat. It's a pretty boat. They move stuff back and forth. Good times.
Yes.
It was, I had to throw this in, it was built on Spencer's Island.
Ooh.
In Nova Scotia, and originally was registered as a British ship called Amazon, but was later transferred to American registration and renamed the Mary Celeste. There's a couple of weird things related to it. I can't decide how many of them are true or not. There maybe someone died, like the captain got sick and died. Maybe it ran aground. Maybe there's an issue. I don't know. It's irrelevant. So it ended up becoming an American ship. It was renamed the Mary Celeste, and it was fine. It moved cargo back and forth for a while. In 1872, the ship underwent a major refit, costing about $10,000, which is a lot of money in 1872.
Right.
And this enlarged her space a lot. It increased her length and her width and how deep she was. And they even added a second deck. So, cool.
It was like a major overhaul.
Yeah, major overhaul. It included extensions to the poop deck. I love it. As well as new transoms, and they replaced a lot of the timbers on it. So, it was a big deal. It increased its value a lot, made it much bigger to carry stuff, and
right, so it could carry more things.
The captain of the ship at this point is Benjamin Spooner Briggs. And he himself had some of the shares. So, he had bought into the boat as well as part of the refit. So,
gotcha.
Invested in the boat, gives a shit about the boat. That's important to hold on to. It's they just redid the boat. People had invested in it. They were planning to make a lot of money. And so after it goes through all of this overhaul in November of that year on the 7th, the Mary Celeste left New York City to sell to Genoa. Is it Genoa or Genoa? Which way to pronounce it?
I don't know.
Genoa? Whichever one. That's where it was going, but it never got there, so it doesn't really matter. So they departed November 7th. About a month later, on December 4th, the De Gratia, a Canadian ship of similar size, was on its way on the same path that the Mary Celeste took. It was about 8 days behind from when they left. And when they were midway between the Azores and Portugal, they saw a ship in the distance that seemed to be sailing erratically, unsteadily towards them. They were concerned. They're like, what's happening?
They're like, what's going on?
So they get to the ship. They don't see anyone on deck. No one is replying to any of their signals, that they're like, hey, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know, they shoot stuff in the air. Beats me. It's the 1800s.
Right, yeah.
And so the captain of the De Gratia ends up sending 2 of his men over to kind of check it out. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And so they get to the ship, and no one is there. No one.
Not a soul.
Not a single
soul. And that's gotta be
soul.
Creepy. I wouldn't want to be those 2 guys.
No, I creep out just because, again, I'm thinking about the Unsolved Mystery episode where they reenact it, and you're like...
Right.
So no one is there, and the boat is in kind of disheveled condition, but is still seaworthy. Like, it's fine.
Yeah, it's not like you're like, oh, these people were attacked by pirates, or...
So, yeah. So they're looking, and they're like, the sails are partly set and in poor condition. Some are missing. The rigging is damaged. There's ropes kind of hanging loosely over the sides. But the main hatch was secure. And, there were... Let's see. These are words I don't know. I don't know boats. I'm sure you're shocked.
You're like, I don't know what these words mean.
So, like, the main hatch cover was totally secure, but the fore hatch and the lazarette, don't know that word, hatch, were open, but their covers were right beside them. So, like, it wasn't anything crazy. The ship's compass has something called a binacle housing that's over top of it. I don't know what that means. But anyway, it had shifted. The glass cover was broken. There was about 3 feet of water in the hold, which sounds terrifying, but actually is completely normal for the ship. It's part of the boat that is under the water. There's always water on it because wood.
Right.
Water gets in. There was what looked like a makeshift sounding rod, which is a device that they would use to measure the amount of water in the hold that they found. So they were obviously paying attention to the amount of water, but whatever.
Right.
And there were 2 water pumps in the boat to pump out the water that naturally gets into the boat. One of them had been disassembled, and they are not really sure what that was about. So the sail of the boat, as they're looking at it, was what they would call under partial sail, which means that probably they had come across some strong winds, and so they bring the sail down to keep it from getting ripped or torn. But as they're looking around, they're like, the single one lifeboat, which is terrifying to me, there's only one, is missing. So
how many people?
There.
Yeah, like how many people are on that boat? Can they all fit on that one lifeboat?
But they still had plenty of provisions. The cargo, which was a crap ton of alcohol, totally intact. Like, nothing is missing. There's plenty of food. Everything is put away. Like in the galley, it's all clean. There's no food out. It's not like it was in the middle of a prep or anything, and people had to like hurriedly get off. They're looking through like the captain's chambers and the crew, and like all the personal belongings are still there. There's even
it wasn't like they left in a hurry and they were
like no one grabbed their stuff to run. Like everything's still there. It's mostly undisturbed. The captain had a sword that was just chilling. He didn't take that, so they're just kind of like, the fuck is happening here? So they go and they find the captain's log and find that the last entry was from 10 days earlier.
Oh, wow.
So November 25th at 5 a.m. was the last time there was an entry, and it recorded a position 400 nautical miles away from where they found this boat.
Wow.
There's no obvious
That's
signs.
significant.
There's no obvious signs of fire, no obvious signs of violence. Just everyone
Right.
is gone, and they're never seen or heard from ever again.
That's wild.
So who was on board? So it's not a huge ship, and its
Right.
primary purpose is to take cargo. But the captain, Benjamin Briggs, was on board with his wife, Sarah, who was also his cousin. I'm not going to get into that. You know how I feel about those things?
Ew.
Ew, ew. Along with their 1-year-old, at least under 2, it's a little uncertain,
Yeah.
their daughter, Sophia. So they were all on board. They did have a son named Arthur, but he was school age, and so he stayed home with his grandma. So he was not on the boat.
Ah, gotcha.
So that was the captain and his family. His first mate, Albert G. Richardson, who was married to the niece of the main owner of the boat, and had sailed with Briggs before, so totally
Right.
fine. Their second mate, Andrew Gilling, again, just totally fine. They had a steward named William Head, who had been personally recommended by the owner. So, again, the owner and the captain know each other. They've been together for several years.
Right.
There's no bad blood here. They
Yeah.
also had 4 general seamen, which, whatever that means.
This sounds like guys who've had experience. Like, these are
Yes.
not newbie people who are like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right. Well, and
Yeah.
it's also a mix of people who seem to already know Briggs or had worked with him or were
Right.
known to the owner, were connected, people who give a damn.
Yeah. Or people who, like, at least get along enough they can work together that they don't. There was no saboteur.
Right. So there were 4, again, general seamen. 2 of them were brothers named, I love these names, Volkert and Boz Lorenzen.
Nice.
I love it. I love it.
Boss.
Arian Martens and Gottlieb Gutschol. They were all Germans, but again, all very experienced. And before the crew had left, the captain, Briggs, had written to his mother regarding their journey and had said that he was imminently satisfied with his crew. So, he was pleased with who was going to be on the ship with him. So,
Right.
there's no oh God, I can't believe Boz is here. I hate that guy.
Right.
You know, he's such a dick. None of that. He's
Yeah.
like, no, this is a good crew. Some he'd worked with before. Some were highly recommended. So
Yes.
all good feelings. But they're all just gone. Poof, disappeared. And so the De Gratia decides to essentially send 3 of their men over to, take over the boat, and they sail it with them. Because when you find a boat, fun things, if you find a boat in the open seas and nobody's there, it's yours, sort of.
Right.
You get to
right.
claim the salvage rights. So if it gets sold or whatever, which is weird to me. I'm like, what? I don't understand, but whatever.
Yeah.
So they take it and salvage it. It gets sold in 1885. Or no, it gets sold. This is 1970 or 1872 still. And at the salvage hearings, they decide, everyone is kind of this is weird. And so it's not just a generic, oh, you salvaged a boat that was half sunk or whatever, and whatever.
Right.
They're like, what's going on? So they're doing kind of an investigation. So
Like, there's no way that you just found this boat.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're just, people are like, So John Austin, who was the surveyor of shipping, ends up doing like an examination of the boat, going on board, and he notes some cuts on the side of the bow that he thinks were made by a sharp instrument. He thinks that there's possible traces of blood on the sword that was in the captain's lodgings. He found a vial of sewing machine oil that was sitting upright and was like, well, that would have fallen over if there had been like severe weather.
Yeah.
And like they examined the exterior of the boat. There's no evidence that it had been in any kind of a collision or that it had run aground anywhere. But then he also is like, it looks like on on one of the ship's rails, it looked like there were blood stains on it. So he's like, foul play?
Yeah.
What's happening? Later, though, they were able to do testing on both the sword and the ship's rails. I don't know what that is because this is literally the 1800s.
Yeah, like what testing are we doing?
No concept. But whatever they did, they determined that it was not blood on either of those surfaces.
Okay. I know. I'm like, what testing are we doing
I was
back
like,
in the day?
It didn't go into that, but I'm like, flies didn't come, so you assumed it must not be blood? Like, I don't... Where is this going? I don't understand. So, cool on them, I guess. So, ultimately, the boat was sold for way less than it was worth because everyone is, like, skeptical and also a little, like, freaked out, I think.
Well, plus, the people who, like, sail the seas, they are very, very superstitious.
Yes.
Like, all those people are so superstitious and they got like all their little sayings and it's like, so yeah, I can imagine that boat was probably like, probably some bad juju attached to that
fair.
boat.
Like,
yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
I mean, I have like, what, 4th, 5th, 17th hand creepy juju about it. I'm like, bleh.
Right.
I won't get on that boat. But what's interesting is that, so it was salvaged, it was sold, the Mary Celeste, but in 1885, the owner of it at the time deliberately wrecked it off the coast of Haiti as part of an insurance fraud attempt. And I'm like,
oh.
Okay, all right. Okay. Which was one of the things that they thought, well, maybe that was something that was happening with the disappearance of the crew, that maybe all of that was an insurance fraud, attempt to get...
And it didn't go the way they planned.
Well, and that, like, I don't know, there's so many weird theories. In fact, we'll talk about them. Let's talk about some of the theories. So, obviously, one of the big theories is foul play, that maybe Briggs lost his marbles and killed everyone and then killed himself. And you're like, I mean, there's no evidence. Right. This is all just supposition because no one has the vaguest idea what really happened.
Right.
Or maybe someone else in the crew did that. There was some talk that the brothers maybe had done something because none of their personal possessions were found on the ship. Everyone else's were, but none of theirs.
Oh, okay.
And that's shady. You're like, well,
shady.
But why? But then it turned out, according to their family, that they had lost all of their gear earlier in 1872 in a shipwreck.
Oh, okay.
So you're like, well, okay. So maybe they didn't really have any personal possessions per se with them on this trip. So, okay.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's still weird. You have nothing that's just yours? Whatever. I don't know things. Then there's a thought that maybe the crew of the De Gradia killed them in order to, like, get the cargo.
Oh, and then they lied about it?
And, it was like, oh, we just found it. It was just empty.
Right.
But, like, what was weird about that is, like, so there were, it's on here somewhere, 1,701 barrels of alcohol, which is a lot. But of them, there were, like, only 6 of those barrels were empty. All the others were full.
Yeah.
And the 6 barrels that were empty were made out of, I think, of a different wood than the rest of them, and it was a wood known to leak because it was far more porous, and so that was
Oh,
not a
okay.
surprise. But I was like,
Right.
but all of it? I don't know. There's so many weird bits of information because this is such an old story at this point. Like, there's no evidence. Anything that had been held on
Right.
to is gone now. So it's just like, well, this is
There's
what a
nothing.
copy of something maybe, and you're like, I don't know.
Right.
But there was the thought that maybe it was a conspiracy to carry out like insurance or salvage fraud, and that Briggs was in on it. And so like they killed all of his crew, but like he was in a secret compartment, probably with his wife and kids, surely,
Oh,
of
yeah.
the Del Gratia. But then it's like they had a son. And
Right.
that
They had
kid,
another child.
it's like they had another child. So what is happening?
He wouldn't just leave him and go
No.
start another life. Just the 3 of them. That would be ew.
Weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there was also the thought, well, oh, pirates, because pirates are real and they're
Yes.
problematic.
Uh-huh.
But they would have looted the ship. They would have taken
Right.
at least some of the
Oh, they
cargo. They
absolutely would have taken the alcohol.
definitely would have taken the personal possessions that had like some value.
Right.
I'm not leaving a sword. That's my sword now. Are you kidding?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Like they're. I mean, why do you think there's like pillage and plunder? I mean, come
Yeah,
on. It's like,
absolutely. One of the main theories, and this is one that I remember seeing on Unsolved Mysteries, is that perhaps there was concern because of the alcohol that was on board, that the fumes were coming up out of the boat, and there is concern that maybe an explosion could happen. Alcohol is combustible, as we all know.
yes. Yes. Yes.
And so perhaps they got into the lifeboat. Maybe they had tied a rope to the main ship so that they were like they were able to be close to give it time to air out to be safe. But then the rope came undone and the boat sailed away without them.
Mm.
That's one theory, but the boat rope was cut, which would to them indicate that they must have like quickly got into a lifeboat and abandoned ship, which is
Right.
weird. So not really sure about that. Um, and in the ship's log, there were several mentions of ominous rumbling and small explosions from the hold, which sounds terrible and scary, except that apparently alcohol naturally emits the explosive gas, and that some of
Yeah.
that is very common to have little mild rumblings. And I'm like, I wouldn't want to be on that boat.
No.
There may have been a more intense explosion that, you know, caused them to like decide then maybe this is too much and abandon ship. So it's perhaps this is, you know, guessing. It's all guesswork. Perhaps a sailor
Right.
ventured below the deck with an open flame or a lit
Uh,
cigar, and it caused them to ignite, causing an explosion that would have dislodged some of the hatches, because some of the hatches were open, some were not. And that they boarded the lifeboat and abandoned because they thought it was going to just explode and blow up. But there's a lot of back and forth about how
right.
he was a real, you know, he'd been sailing for a long time, and that you don't abandon your ship because you're far more likely to be able to survive on the big real boat than the tiny
The
little
tiny
lifeboat.
little- yeah. Mhm.
And to take no provisions with you, like they took nothing with them,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is insane.
That doesn't make any sense.
So you're like, what the heck? Okay. Some of the other more fun things. Maybe it was a submarine earthquake. That is an earthquake that occurs on the seabed and could have caused a lot of turbulence on the surface that might cause to damage some of the damage to the Mary Celeste, that could then cause like the cargo to move around and release noxious fumes and then blah, blah, blah.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
There's also the theory that maybe a water spout happened. There had been a lot of bad weather and storms that they had sailed through previously.
Okay. Yeah.
And so it's possible that like that happened, and because it brought so much water on board that it made them think that there was way more water on board than there really was.
Mm-hmm.
One of my personal favorite, it was a giant squid.
Yes.
Or other sea monster that came up and just like plucked them out. It's like, you're mine. I eat you now.
The Kraken.
It was the Kraken. Or was it aliens?
Aliens. That's my...
Aliens. I mean, what a great way to get like a test subject. You know, he's like, well, you know, I got some men, I got a woman, I got a kid, I can like check them all out and see what how they work, what they do, and no one will ever know because they're just on this random boat in the middle of the ocean.
Right. And then they put them back somewhere else and they don't remember who they are.
Right. So it has been a mystery forever and ever and ever, basically since it happened. Even Arthur Conan Doyle tried to weigh in on it and wrote a short story about it in 1884, in which he claimed, for fictional purposes, that the inhabitants of this ghost ship fell victim to an ex-slave seeking vengeance. So nice, good murderous vibes there.
Well, I mean, what would you expect?
But ultimately, no one will never really know what happened to the people on the Mary Celeste. The best guess is that where they would have been on the day that they abandoned ship was within sight of land, so that perhaps there was something happening. They decided to abandon ship to get to land, but that their lifeboat flipped over and everyone drowned because it's hard. It's hard to get to land, but because if they had made it to the island, then we would have heard from them because it was a habited island. But
right.
No one knows. It's a mystery. They're all just poof gone, and it will remain unsolved for all time.
That's crazy.
And that is the story of the creepy ghost ship, the Mary Celeste, and how everyone just fucking vanished.
Don't have a clue.
And we don't have a clue. Like, there's guesses, but for every guess, there's like but that doesn't make sense because of blah, 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 blah. Right. And you're like, well, then what does make sense? Everyone left. They took nothing with them. Like, if I'm abandoning ships, like, hurry, go, go, go. I'm still, like, grabbing some stuff. Like, let me grab my blanket. Let me make sure that my 1-year-old has food or whatever. Like, here's her toy. Don't want to leave that behind. Like, it's crazy to me. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
So.
Well, thank you for that. That was excellent. Because I know what episode you're talking about, and it is like, you're like,
it's creepy. It creeps me out, man. Because you're like, what happened?
I know. It is. I agree.
All right, Claire, what story have you brought us for Unsolved Mysteries?
I am going to be talking about the death of Elizabeth Short, otherwise known as the Black Dahlia.
I love it. I love it.
My sources are Wikipedia. Oh yeah, your sources.
I never said I'm so much better than this. I usually don't do that. So sorry. My sources were Wikipedia, Smithsonian Magazine, History, and All That's Interesting. So, sorry. Sorry about that. So sorry.
My sources are Wikipedia, FBI.org.gov. That's what it was. FBI.gov. All That's Interesting, and Rolling Stone. So, on January 15th, 1947, a woman was walking with her child around an LA neighborhood and she saw what she first thought was a mannequin lying on the ground. But she soon realized that it was something much more sinister than that. It was the mutilated body of a young woman who was naked and she was cut in half at the waist. The body was only a few feet from the sidewalk, and because of the way it was posed, was why the woman thought it was a mannequin, and also because it was cut in half. Because you're not like, oh,
I
that's an
mean,
actual body
I
cut in
feel
half.
like I have. I'm never going to assume it's a mannequin. Like, that's never going to be my first
Right.
thought. Because, like, how
You're never
often.
gonna assume it's a
Well,
mannequin.
I mean, like, how often are you walking down the street and there's a mannequin? Like, I much more am likely to assume it's a dead body over mannequin, right?
Especially now.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's a now
I
thing.
feel like I feel like back then the mannequins looked more human because I feel like the mannequins back then had the hair,
Mm-hmm.
had the especially like female mannequins,
Mm-hmm.
the hair, they had like the facial features with the makeup on. I feel like all the mannequins today are very like the face,
Non-people. Mm-hmm.
yeah, they're faceless, they're just like humanoid forms. Like I feel like
Which is so
now,
much creepier. Oh,
right, right, which is why if you saw something like that, you probably would not assume it was a mannequin because
no.
you're like, no. Yeah. So the initial investigation was led by the LA Police Department, but the FBI was asked to assist, and they quickly identified the body via fingerprints from an arrest from underage drinking. And the body was identified as 22-year-old Elizabeth Short. She was an aspiring actress. She was born July 29th, 1924. She's from Boston, Massachusetts. She was the third of five daughters in her family. Her father lost his this is kind of wild. And just side note, I guess her father lost his savings in the stock market crash,
Hmm.
and then he was assumed to have died by suicide when his car was found abandoned by a bridge in 1930, and they just thought that he jumped in the river and
Mm-hmm.
died. But then 12 years later, the family received a letter from him apologizing and saying that he started a new life in California.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so that whole time her mom just like went out and, like basically like root hog or die. Like she went out and got a job and like took care of the
Wow.
girl. Yeah, yeah.
What a
That whole
dick.
yeah, and then just like 12 years later, like, oh, BT dubs. I'm not dead. I've been alive in California this whole time. Moved on. So when Elizabeth turned 18, she moved to Vallejo, California to live with her dad, who she hadn't seen since she was 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was short lived because apparently they got into a lot of arguments. And about a month later, she moved out. And after that, she kind of bounced around to several different living situations. And in that time, that was when she got arrested for underage drinking. She eventually wound up in LA, and in that time between, she lived in places like Santa Barbara. She went back to Massachusetts, went down to Florida for a little bit, but she wound up back in LA in 1946, and she worked as a waitress and had aspirations to be a film star. And on January 9th, 1947, Elizabeth came back from a trip to San Diego where she went with a married salesman named Robert Red Manley. And he claimed that when they got back, he dropped her off at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown LA. And the Biltmore staff, they said that they saw her in the lobby using a telephone, and then other witnesses say they saw her later at this place called the Crown Grill Cocktail Lounge. It was like 3/8 of a mile from the hotel. And then after that, she was not seen again until her body was found.
Hmm.
So the LAPD realized that she had been missing for 6 days after interviewing like her friends. And so they were like, she was probably kidnapped. Because
Right.
they were
Right.
like, she just went missing. They're like, what happened? Um, so just forewarn you people if you're listening, YouTube, whatever, it's about to get gory, so you may want to like skip a little bit. Um, Elizabeth's body was completely severed at the waist
Ugh.
and drained of blood. and her body had been washed and cleaned. So
Ew.
yeah. And they posed her with her arms like above her head, and they bent her like arms to like right angles at her elbows, and her legs were spread apart, and her lower body was positioned about a foot away from the top half of her body, and like where they cut her was like right below her lumbar on your spine,
Mm-hmm.
and so like your intestines are gonna fall out,
Mm-hmm.
and so they like took her intestines and like tucked them underneath like her butt on
Ew.
her. Yeah,
Why? Why?
yeah,
People are
and
horrible.
I know it's awful. That's why I'm like, it's about to get gross. And near her body there was heel prints and tire tracks and a cement bag that had watery blood in it. And you're just like, this is gross. And basically she had kind of been tortured before she died. She had um, cuts on her face where they had cut at the corner of her mouth, like almost all the way back
Mm-hmm.
to her ear. And it's called a Glasgow smile, is what that's called. And usually, when people would do that type of wound, they'll cut you and then they'll hit you somewhere, either in the stomach, or if you're a guy, they'll hit you in the genitals. They'll do something else to cause you pain, which will make you open your mouth and scream, which will cause it to rip even more.
Ugh.
Yeah.
That's
So
horrible.
it is horrible. It's awful. Um, she also had several cuts on her thighs and breast. They had sliced away a tattoo of a rose from her thigh, like just cut it off, and then taken that piece of skin and shoved it in her vagina.
Okay, like I've heard this story several times and I don't remember ever hearing this. This is
That was on
horrifying.
three separate
That's
three separate
horrifying.
of my sources. I had never heard that either. I can't tell you how many countless
Yeah.
documentaries about this, and I have never heard that tidbit.
And I was
But yeah, this
like,
was on three separate sources that I read, and I was like, hmm.
that is. I mean,
Yeah, I was like,
this is
I
somebody
have,
who fucking hated her. Like, whoa.
yes, yes. And it was like, what the hell? She had bruising on her scalp consistent with blows to the head. And there was some evidence around her anus suggesting that she may have been raped, but there was no semen or sperm found. It was tests were negative, so either it had gotten washed away or possibly with foreign object. Death they said was from the hemorrhaging from the lacerations on her face and the trauma from the blows to the head. So her body being cut in half happened after she was dead. So that didn't happen while she was alive,
I
which
guess that's
is
good,
a
but
teeny
like,
tiny minor consolation.
yeah.
But so, I mean, obviously finding a body in the state was like big news. So like the second it started getting out, reporters like were like flies to sugar on the scene and taking photos, all this stuff. And once it got out, like, because they identified her body within an hour once they ran the fingerprints, like, it was fairly quick.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and so I guess back then they weren't like, oh, we're not going to tell people who this person is until we tell the family. So I guess it kind of leaked who she
Mm-hmm.
was. So this is also awful. Reporters contacted her mother, Phoebe, as soon as they found out who what her identity was, and they lied to her mother, saying that Elizabeth had won a beauty contest to get Phoebe to open up and give them like all kinds of personal information about
Oh,
Elizabeth.
no.
Yeah, yeah. And once they got what they wanted, then they like dropped the bomb on her and said,
Oh, by the
"Oh,
way, she
by the
was
way,
brutally, horrifically
yeah,
murdered.
yeah, your
Ugh.
daughter was murdered." Yeah. And these same reporters sensationalized this whole case and they kind of like drug Elizabeth through the mud. So they're the ones who like dubbed her the Black Dahlia. So the last thing that Elizabeth was seen in was like this black tailored suit, but they basically said it was like this tight skirt and this sheer black blouse. And so that's how they kind of dubbed her the Black Dahlia, because there's a movie out called The Blue Dahlia. So it was kind of like a play on that. So it was
Okay.
like she was kind of like a sex kitten or something, was kind of like where this was going. Um, and they described her as someone who prowled Hollywood Boulevard and kind of insinuated that she was a prostitute.
Mm-hmm.
But there was also a police report that said this victim knew at least 50 men at the time of her death, and at least 25 men had been seen with her in the 60 days preceding her death. She was known as a teaser of men.
Ew.
That's what the police report said.
Fuck
So,
them.
right, you're just like,
A teaser of men.
right. You're just like, but was she?
Stop victim blaming. Stop it.
Right, right. It's like, shut up. Yeah. Um, on January 21st, this newspaper called The Examiner received a call from a person claiming to be the killer. And this person said they would be mailing some belongings as proof. And then on the 24th, the Examiner received a package with Elizabeth's birth certificate, some business cards, and an address book that had the name Mark Hansen on the cover. And it had a note in it that was like cut out from clippings, like a ransom note. It wasn't a
Okay.
ransom note, but it had
Right.
like a note with it, you know. All the items have been wiped down with gasoline, so there was no fingerprints. But they did find a partial fingerprint on the envelope, but it wound up being damaged in transport and was never analyzed. So I'm just like, y'all suck.
You had one piece of evidence and you fucked it up. Good
He's
job.
like, you had one job. You have one job.
Wow.
2 days later, on the 26th, another letter stating that the killer, the person on the phone who's doing all this stuff, said that he would turn himself in on the 29th at 10 a.m. It didn't say what the location was, but it named a location. So the 29th at 10 a.m. came and went, and the guy never showed up. Like the police were there, they were waiting,
Mm-hmm.
and never showed up. Later they got another note with the kind of clipping, like cutout thing, and it said, "Have changed my mind. You would not give me square deal. Dahlia killing justified." And it had no fingerprints on it. And then, like a few months later, March 14th, somebody found a suicide note with clothes by the ocean, and it was handwritten, and it said, "To whom it may concern, I have waited for police to capture me for Black Dahlia killing, but have not. I am too much of a coward to turn myself in, so this is the best way out for me. I couldn't help myself for that or this. Sorry, Mary." And they don't know who those clothes belong to, and it's like this person just like walked off into the ocean and drowned themselves. They don't. Yeah, it's just like, what?
Oh my god.
So, but while this is all
Ugh.
going, all this, whatever, I don't even know, ridiculousness is going on. The guy whose address book they found, Mark Hansen, he quickly became a suspect. He was the nightclub owner, and he was an acquaintance of Elizabeth's. Her roommate, Elizabeth's roommate, Ann Toth, told police that Elizabeth had rejected several sexual advances from Hansen, and that might have been a motive for him to kill her. And the police did look into it, and eventually they cleared Hansen. Um, and other people from Hansen's address book were investigated. Like some of them were also like acquaintances of Elizabeth's.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them had alibis, or others were just dead ends. Like there was nothing to it. Um, Overall, there were 750 investigators on this case.
Holy hell. Like
and
that's
yeah,
insane.
I know. And they interviewed over, well, and I think also because it was so sensationalized and how brutal it was
Yeah.
just like people lost their minds. They interviewed over 150 potential suspects, and at that time there were more than 60 confessions, but none were found to be legit.
I
And since then,
I just
since
love, by the
I
way,
know,
that that's the thing that people do. They will just confess to like random crimes, and I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you?
right, right. You're just like, what are you doing? What? You just do it. You attention whore is what you are. You're an attention whore. Anyway, but since then, there have been more than 500 confessions, like over time since then.
My God, that's so
Right.
stupid.
I know. And so in 1999, there was a guy named Steve Hodel. He's retired LAPD. His dad, named George Hodel, had passed away, and he was going through his dad's stuff, and he found these two photographs that he thought looked like Elizabeth Short. And he was like, why would my dad have these two photographs? And so he starts looking into things, and he starts suspecting that his dad may have killed Elizabeth Short. And so because he's like retired LAPD, he's got pull. So he starts going through like old newspaper clippings. He starts going through old police files. He even like used the like some kind of what was it? What did it say that like some kind of FBI Freedom of Information Act or something to get like the FBI files because this case was so old and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people who were involved in it have passed away. So it's not like, there's not really anybody around who
Right,
is
right.
still connected with it. And he starts looking at it, and there's a lot of like uncanny things that are like, his dad was probably a good candidate for the person who murdered. I mean, there's no conclusive evidence,
Right,
but
right.
one of the things was his dad was a surgeon, and the procedure to cut her body in half and where it was cut, like it was clean. It wasn't like somebody just like sawed her in half all willy nilly. Um, the way it was cut is a procedure called see if I can say this, hemicorporectomy. The like where it was cut,
Okay.
and that particular procedure was being taught around the time his dad would have gone through medical school. I don't know why you would teach such a thing. Like, why would you need to learn how to cut somebody's
I
body
mean,
in half?
I guess just for these times when you've discovered you've killed someone and now you must get rid of the body.
I guess I don't know, but like he would have known how to do that, like where the body was cut, like below the lumbar part of your spine and all that jazz. Um, and also he started going back through like his dad's files and papers and all this stuff. Like I guess his dad was one of those people who kept everything, and he
Now that's the
found
rookie mistake. Don't keep your shit, guys.
right, right, right. Um, and he found that his dad, like back in the day, had um gotten a contractor and they were like doing some work on his child, like his childhood home, and he'd found like when they were doing this work that his dad had gone to the store and bought some concrete, and it was the same brand of concrete that was found next to her body. And so that was like another thing that was like, oh my
Can
gosh.
you imagine, like, you've spent your whole working life as someone
A
within the police,
cop.
like as a cop, maybe a detective of some kind, like you have your
Right.
whole life and you're going through your dad's stuff who has at this point passed and you're probably just
Right.
clearing shit out
Yeah.
and you're like, holy fuck, my dad may have been a horrific murderer.
Right.
How do you even
Um,
process that?
and so because some of the things that the killer that was on the phone sent the police were handwritten. Not all of them were cut out little ransom note looking things. So he sent his dad's stuff in for handwriting analysis, and it came back that it could possibly be a match. It wasn't
Not.
specifically, it wasn't completely conclusive, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like, it could be.
We
I mean, it
can't
wasn't
say it
like
wasn't him.
exactly. That's exactly. You can't say no. Like it wasn't like this is absolutely not the same person, but it wasn't like an absolute 100% yes. Um, so he takes all this stuff that he has compiled, and he wrote a book called Black Dahlia Avenger, the true story. And so there is a guy who worked, I can't remember what the newspaper was. His name was Steve Lopez, but he was fact checking this book. And while he was fact checking this book, he came across some other information where he found out that he discovered that George Hodel was actually a suspect of the LAPD at the time.
Oh.
Apparently, they had 6 main suspects, and George Hodel was one of them. So much so that they had wiretapped his phone at his house.
Whoa.
Yes. And that there was, I mean, they couldn't hear everything because, this is wiretaps back in the almost 1950s.
Right.
So it's not, but there were things where they'd heard him say, where they could possibly have heard a woman screaming. And then they heard him say over the phone, they were like, well, if they think that I killed the Black Dahlia, they don't have any evidence. And if they think my secretary knows, she's dead. So they think he might have killed his secretary as well.
Oh my God.
So yeah, there was that kind of stuff. So not only that he might have killed his secretary, so there's other things. So his son Steve has found other evidence too, suggesting that his dad might have been a serial killer.
Can you imagine?
And there was, they were talking with other like prosecutors today, and they said, yeah, like this now, what you have now, that definitely would have been enough to at least move forward, maybe not convict, but at least move forward with some kind of like grand jury or something like that to at least start the process moving. So I'm just like, that's wild to me. Like, he may not have killed her, but there is other evidence that he
killed somebody, probably.
Yes.
Multiple people.
And possibly other people. Yeah, using his surgeon skills. So the fact that you're just like, can you imagine, like you said, you've gone your whole life working as a policeman, and you find out after your dad's passed that he's not who you thought he was.
Oh,
and you're like,
turns
oh
out
God.
Daddy was a serial killer.
Right. Like, no.
Oops.
So that's like one true possibility of who could have killed her. Another one, there is a British author. I don't know if this guy's name is Piu or Piu. It's Piu. Last name is Eatwell. He wrote a book called Black Dahlia Red Rose. And in his book, he talks about there is a man named Leslie Dillon who was a bellhop at the Biltmore. I think it was the Biltmore. Anyway, this guy, apparently, he's suggesting that this guy did the bidding of Mark Hansen.
Okay.
That he killed Elizabeth Short for Mark Hansen, that they were kind of in it together. And he suspects that, I guess he's gone back and looked at things. I don't know how he got this information, but he suspects that the crime happened at this place called the Astor Motel. Apparently on January 15th, the owner, whose name was Henry Hoffman, found one of the rooms covered in blood and fecal matter. And then in another room, he found a bundle of women's clothes that was also covered in blood. But he never reported their arrest because 4 days prior to that, he had been arrested for beating his wife. So he just like cleaned it up and
he
kind of
didn't tell anybody because he's like, I don't want to get blamed for this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he may have told like his friends or something, but he never like reported it.
Right.
So
wow.
Yeah. So that is also a possibility. But then there was also a thing that he put out too, that maybe because Elizabeth had been with these two guys, that she had overheard them talking about a crime, and that they killed her because she knew about something they had done too. So that's also why they might have killed her, is because she knew of something they had done. So there's that as well. I can't imagine like just walking into a hotel room and being like, I'm not going to report this. This place is covered in blood.
Well, also, I don't want to clean it up. Ew.
Yeah, but apparently he just like cleaned it up and went about his business.
Can you imagine like the next people who sit in that room and had no idea?
Oh my God. No, I cannot.
Blech. Ugh.
No.
Blech.
No, nope, I cannot. But anyway, it's just yeah, those were two of the like main possibilities of people who really could have killed her. But they looked into both Mark Hansen and Leslie Dillon at the time and let them go.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they looked into George Hodel too.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
there was never enough.
yeah.
Although I feel with George Hodel, you could have at least gotten him for his secretary's murder.
Well, but
I feel like
nobody, no crap. Like, where's the body? Where's the secretary? Like, you can't.
right, still it's just shady.
I'm
Anyway,
with you. I'm with you.
but the case is still open today, and they still do not conclusively know who or why this happened to Elizabeth Short.
That is so
And
crazy.
it's just like, what?
I know. Oh, God. I mean, that's one of those stories that has always been around. And you're just like, what the hell?
And
Why can't we
also,
figure
I'm
this
all
out?
about not like just shoving pictures in people's faces
Yeah.
of dead bodies and stuff. So I'm like scrolling down all that's interesting, like reading, and they've got a photo of like her face from the autopsy.
Oh,
And
God.
I'm like, oh, I was not prepared for that. Like
No.
I've seen pictures of her, like what she looked like, but it was
Mm-hmm.
like two photos side by side from the autopsy of her face, like what it looked like with the cuts and I was like, I warn a person. Damn it.
Yeah.
At
I don't
least
need
put
that.
the fuzzy thing over it where it's like sensitive matter, click at your own risk or
Yeah.
some bullshit like that. At least then I know that it's like
I'm
a little
prepared for it.
risque.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't like it when I'm just scrolling down and it's like, oh, no. Whoa. At least
It's
prepare me. Okay.
it's kind of how I felt with my Everest story last week, as I was like, "Oh,
Right.
look at all these frozen dead people that we just take pictures of. It's fine."
Right.
Ugh.
You're like, is this what? Yeah, exactly. You're just like, no,
It's like,
no,
"Oh,
no.
here's this guy," and you're like, "Uh,
Right.
here's a half decayed corpse," because sometimes the sun comes out, and you're like, "Uh, uh, no."
Right. You're just like, this is no. Mm-mm.
Well,
But
that
yeah, I just
was
feel like,
amazing.
yeah, I just feel like because of the time period, everything about this story is shitty.
Yes.
Everything about it.
I'm still just trying to process, like, I mean, like my dad. My dad's so great and I love him and he's wonderful. But like what happens if it turns out when they're gone and I'm going through their stuff that dad has like a secret file of, people he murdered on trips. Like I don't
Right.
know. Like what do you do with that? Yeah.
Right. Like, it's just like, what do you, yeah.
I don't think I'd go with, writing a book about that, but like to each their own. To
Right.
each their own.
Right. Right.
But
No. Mm-mm.
like the amount of therapy I would need to process that. I can't.
Oh, 100%. Oh, absolutely. Like, no, thank
Wow.
you.
Wow.
But yeah, there were certain things that it's like you said, I've seen several documentaries on this, or like even like, Datelines, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But that one tidbit about the rose tattoo in the vagina, I had never heard of.
Well, and like that just feels. I think what gives me is like it. There's only two options. It's either someone who really hated her, like was really angry, really hated her, and just like very personal, or it was some insane psychopath who just
Right.
gets off on this. But at that point, you expect to find more than just the one.
Right.
So it feels like it has to be someone who knew her in some way
Right.
that
Right.
just hated her. Cause like,
Which would
okay,
suggest too that like maybe that George Hodel guy knew her because he had the photos. Like,
mm-hmm.
why would he have just random photos of her?
But it also suggests that the other suspects, the whole maybe she heard something or knew something. Like, there's no reason to
Right.
torture her and kill her. They could just kill her and be done with it. Like the
Right.
level that they went to is like there's
But the fact that like maybe, now the whole like she rejected him.
right. Like I could see
on more
that.
than one occasion.
Like that's anger and
Because there were reports too. There were like people who'd said that she had stayed at his house, I guess, like when she
mm-hmm.
didn't have an apartment or roommate or whatever. Like not, it made it sound like it was not in a sexual manner.
Right.
You know, that he had helped her out or whatever. And then it was almost, you know how men are. I helped you out. Now you need to help me out.
Right.
Like it might have been one of those, you know, and or maybe he was trying to like hold his, because he, you know, he owned a nightclub, he owned a theater, so he was trying to like use his power over her too. I don't know. This
mm-hmm.
is just
Yeah.
this is all conjecture
It
right
is.
now. Okay,
We know nothing. It's an
I'm just
unsolved
making, I
mystery.
am pulling this out of my ass at this point. But you know, it might have been something like that too, where it's like I'm a business owner and you're not, and so
mm-hmm.
I'm going to try to use my power over you. And she didn't, because I mean, the fact that she turned him down, you know, like if she was as slutty and as, you know, as they made her out to be,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like if he had the
Because
thought
they
that
made
she,
it sound like she
yeah.
had zero, like,
Yeah.
zero qualms with,
Well, but I
like,
also assume
no
that
standards.
I assume that none of that is true.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But I'm
I
just
assume
saying.
none of that is true because
Oh, I am. Oh,
it's the
absolutely. But I'm
50s
just
and
saying.
whatever. But
You would
if
think that
someone
if
had
she
that, yeah.
was, that she was what they made her out to be, that she would, you know, she had no standards and
Yeah.
that she would
That
have
she would
just,
have just slept with him. So
right, exactly.
been like, fine,
Exactly.
fine, fine, whatever.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm just like, there's things here that are not adding up. The fact that you all are making her sound like a prostitute when she really wasn't. So, you know,
Wild. That's a wild story. Thank you, Claire.
you're welcome.
Thank you. All right. Well, I guess it means it's time for us to say what we're judging this week. Claire, what are you judging this week?
I saw this TikTok. I didn't even know this had happened until I think Tessa, yeah, Tessa sent me this TikTok. Anyway, it was the Critics' Choice Awards.
Okay.
And have you seen the movie Barbie?
Not yet, but I'm going to.
Okay. Well, two songs from Barbie, and I don't know what other songs were up for best song or whatever, Critics' Choice. But two songs from Barbie were up for best song or whatever. It was Billie Eilish's What Was I Made For? And then it was the one that Ryan Gosling sings in the movie, I'm Just Ken.
I'm
Which is
just
kind
kidding.
of
Okay.
I'm Just Ken. It's the goofy song where he's like, poor, poor, pitiful me.
Right.
She's not paying me any attention. Yeah, that song. And the Critics' Choice was the I'm Just Ken song. Beat out What Was I Made For? And
Well, if that
first I'm
isn't
judging
just the misogynistic point of the movie going insane. All
first
right.
I'm judging Ryan Gosling's reaction because it's perfection. His face was like, what the fuck? You all have made the worst decision on the planet. Like he really was. He was like, his face was like, I'm in the wrong timeline.
It's like,
what is happening right now?
no.
I'll have to send you the TikTok so you can see his face. And I mean, and then he starts like hesitantly clapping, like, what's happening right now? And so then, like, and they're saying, like, going to accept the award. It's the two guys who wrote it, and then performer Ryan Gosling. He absolutely sits his happy ass back down in the chair and is like, I'm not going up there. Like he knows. He knows. He's like, no, I'm not. No. This is wrong. I'm not going up there. I'm not accepting this award. This is stupid. Like that's just
oh my god, that's hilarious. You're gonna be like, did you miss the whole point of this movie? Like, what the hell is wrong with you?
So good judge for Ryan Gosling, and his reaction was like, what the hell is wrong with you people?
It's like, this is wrong.
And I'm judging whoever fucking picked that song because it's like, here you passed over this beautiful, heartfelt, like gut-wrenching song. I mean, this song was written to like evoke emotion. Like you listen to the words and you're like, the lyrics of this song are great. Like there are so many songs out there today that you're like, what the fuck does this song even mean?
Right.
You know, you're like, this song is stupid. like you just kind of bebop along to it because the beat's good, the melody's decent, but the words are just kind of like
Yeah.
trash. You just throw them away. Not this song. It's a pretty song. It's a beautiful song. And the lyrics just like, I mean, they almost make you want to cry, which I mean, they kind of use the melody of that song like throughout the movie, like whenever they want you, like whenever Barbie's up in her feels,
Mm-hmm.
they kind of use that tune to get you up in your feels. So
Okay. Mm-hmm.
it's like, and it just kills me because it's like this whole movie was about like women being strong and the shit that women have to go through to do things. And here you passed over a song that was written by a woman for women, and you went for the song that was written by men that was kind of a spoofy, goofy song where he's like, poor, poor, pitiful me, you know, the woman's not paying attention to me.
Yeah.
Like, what?
So should we assume that the critics were all men who chose this?
That, yeah, right, right.
That is pretty
I just
horrific.
like, yeah, I just feel like whoever chose that song just missed the whole point of everything. So that's what I'm judging. I'll have to send you the TikTok so you can see. Because the girl who's talking about it, her rant is like spot on. But it's just funny because it's just Ryan. Like I said, it's funny just to watch Ryan Gosling's reaction because his face is like, where am I? What timeline am I in? This is wrong.
He's like, nope.
This is not right.
I appreciate that he has the wherewithal to be like, no, absolutely not. I know better. This is nope.
Yeah,
nope.
Those two other guys got up and walked up there to accept the award, but he did not. He just sat back down and was like, I'm gonna bow out. Thanks. It's like, no, thank you. But yeah, whoever chose that song, what the fuck is wrong with you? Ew, just stop. Stop.
Wow.
Because I watched that movie over Christmas when I was on Christmas vacation with my cousin, and her daughter, who's 3, was kind of in the room. I mean, she'd stop and watch a little bit, but she was mostly playing and eating and doing things. But my mom was in there and my aunt was in there. And I mean, like, there was a couple of places where I was like, I felt myself like getting teary-eyed, where I was like, oh my God, this is actually a really good movie. Like, it's not like you've heard people say like, oh my God, it was really good. But it's like watching it, it was like, wow, this was a lot better than what I really thought it was going to be. And then you get why there are so many men out there who were like, oh, this movie was feminist. You're like, shut the fuck up. Like, just shut up. Like, you don't even know the half of it.
No.
And then I see a thing that was like, let me find it because I sent it. You want to talk about like men just need to shut their fucking mouths, because it was something about PMS studies versus, here it is. There are 5 times more scientific studies on erectile dysfunction, which affects 19% of men, than on PMS, which affects 90% of women. So yeah, just shut your fucking mouths.
Yep.
It's shit like that.
Yeah.
So it's like, just shut up. It's like, that's just one thing, and like, that's like a little minute thing in the grand scheme of things that women have to put up with. Or even like you and I were talking about earlier about how, what was it, the tampons?
Right.
Yeah, like they've never tested tampons on blood.
I was say that was going to be my judge.
oh yes. Okay, sorry. But yes. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder. So yeah,
stop stealing my thunder, Claire. I'm going to cut this out.
I'll quit my judge so you can continue with your judge. So my judge goes into your judge, and your judge is?
My judge is, and I also learned this from a TikTok video, and I started Googling it because I was like, that can't be true. That can't be true. But I learned from a TikTok video that apparently last year, 2023, is the first time that they have ever tested menstrual products with human blood.
Before, I'm like you. I'm like, that can't be true.
And I was like, maybe I'm misunderstanding. And so I go and I Google, and correct. up until August of 2023, they had just been using saline solution.
Which is not even the same consistency.
Which is like, I'm not peeing in my underwear, guys. It's a very viscous, thick, gross, bloodishy thing with bits of tissue. Like, it's not great. It's not a fun time. But like, I was cracking up because the TikTok video, which I did send you, so make sure you check it out, Claire. The woman is like, all this time, I thought something was wrong with me because, like, I'll wear a pad and then I still end up with barbecue sauce stain-looking things on all of my underwear because I'm like, what's wrong with me that I can't bleed right? And you're like, because they've never bothered to test it with anything remotely close to what it would be like for a girl. And I'm like,
because you're like,
what the fuck?
you're like, I'm wearing a super. I know this is like TMI, okay, but you're like, I'm wearing a Super Plus tampon. Why do I have to change my tampon like every hour, hour and a half? And so, because it's like the tampons are like the big. Well, and I'll tell you this: I found some ultra tampons out in the wild, like a couple months ago, and I was like, oh my god, I'm buying them because it's like my life is ridiculous, and I'm like, I need those for like the worst days.
And so,
but it's just like, but you're like, no wonder that you have to change your tampons because they've never. Anyway,
and here's the thing to extrapolate from all that to be like, well, stop whining and complaining. So like, because we've never actually done it that way, we never actually were able to tell based on what products you're using and how often you have to change. At what point are you experiencing heavy enough bleeding that it could be something else for you to have that conversation with your doctor? Like, no one could have that real conversation because we had no concept, because we were comparing apples to oranges. So it's like, oh, turns out that you know, that obviously pads are useless and garbage, but that tampons absorb much more menstrual fluid than saline, which is great, except that it also means that if you're changing a whole lot, you actually do have very heavy bleeding, and you should have a conversation with your doctor about that, because it could be something else going on that can be addressed. And you're like, all of these, I mean, this has been 40 years of just no one giving a damn. And I'm like, what the hell? Because again, like you said, we spent all of this money on making sure men's penises can still, you know, ejaculate and do whatever the fuck they want. But like, literally every person with a uterus deals with this bullshit every 28 days. And we've never bothered to give a single fuck until last year. What the actual hell? My mind explode. Like, because I was like, this can't be real. This can't be real. And it's real. And I died. Because I'm like, guys. And I say that as someone who, I'm sure no one cares here, but I spent this past week, you know, experiencing my magical gift of every 28 days, blah, blah, blah. And like,
is that what we're calling it?
Yeah. Magical gift. And to like go through all that, and like at the end, like I'm done now, but like at the end of all that is when I saw this TikTok video, and I about lost my goddamn mind. I was like, what the fuck? It's like, I feel like garbage, and no one gives a shit. Okay, awesome. Thanks, guys. So annoying. But, so that's my judge. It is bullshit. I'm so fucking angry about it.
I will rant with you about that for days. I mean, I can rant about that kind of nonsense for days.
Like, we literally, well, I mean, hopefully not anymore. Like, I have real issues with animal testing, but like, we will drop in like anything into the eyeball of a rabbit to see what will happen, but we won't bother to test menstrual products with anything remotely close to menstrual blood. Like, what the
you're just like, what?
Fuck. What the fuck? I hate it. I hate everything about it.
And it's like, for me, it's like, and you wonder why women are just like over life at this point.
So fucking like, over it. Like, god damn it.
It's like,
So that's my judge, is that it's 2024 and What the fuck?
Yeah. Right.
Anyway. There you go. That's our judges.
Indeed.
The world is fucking stupid.
Correct. Like, thanks, I hate it here.
Right? It's like, thanks for reminding me yet again that I am a second-class citizen, not worthy to have products made for the issues that I face every fucking month. Thank you.
And it's also like, and that, healthcare providers really don't give a shit about us sometimes.
Yep. It's a never-ending cycle of misery.
Yeah. Oh, are you pregnant? No.
Are you sure? Pretty damn sure. Yeah. All right. On that fun note, it must be time for Tarot Time with Aprile. A spooky. Gonna make it a red moon in honor of
a blood moon.
It's my blood moon, damn it. Ugh. All right. I have no idea. What should we ask the cards this week? How about... I meant to sit down and think about this before I started. You know what? How about... Okay, we ready? You ready?
Yeah.
For our tarot cards. Dear tarot cards, is there a hope and a prayer that things will get better for women this year in 2024?
I was thinking something along that about, like, women.
Will it get better? What's going to happen to us women 2024? All the women. Probably not good things, but we can have hope. Hope for 2024. Right. Let us see what the cards say. We have the Four of Wands. It looks very happy.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Star. And the Knight of Swords. What do you think it means, Claire?
I don't know.
Well, why not? Why haven't you memorized all the cards?
I know, I'm terrible. Because I don't have a book.
I have a book and I still don't know anything, so that's fair. Okay.
I think the Star is something good. What's the other one? Knight of what?
Knight of Swords.
Swords.
So, Four of Wands is how we're starting off here. Walking through the chupa and ready to join the party. I don't think it's a hoopah. I think it's called a hoopah.
I guess.
They are in a hoopah. That's fun. I didn't realize that's how it's spelled, so cool. This is about celebration, joy, silliness, and the excitement of completion, union, family, and friends. It's one of the happiest cards in the deck.
Ooh.
I'm here for that. That's good for us. So much potential here, but we're not moving yet. This card is a reminder to enjoy the moment. So enjoy the fact that it's getting better. How about that?
Hopefully.
We at least are now doing real tests with real blood. So that's something.
Yes.
It just would be nice if they, like, I understand, like, maybe it's hard to collect, like, specifically menstrual blood, but, like, you can do, like, a viscosity, like, consistency close thing. Like, come on.
Right.
So, whatever. All right. Let's see. Beautiful is what this card is. Hope, beauty, and faith restored. It's like a healing balm on an old wound. Just when you think everything is lost and the dark and twisties have taken you as far as you can go, you see the twinkling of the beautiful stars and your heart lifts. It's a start. So, okay. It's a beginning.
Okay.
It's the first drink after days, months of years of being thirsty. This feels very... This feels very like... Yeah, very... This feels good. We're trying.
On point. Yep.
We're trying. All right. And then the Knight of S-Words. All right. Antsy and on the go, always in his head, always moving and challenging himself and others. The horse's hooves aren't touching the ground. Mine are. Mine are touching the ground. Sorry. Oh, it's the tarot equivalent of "come at me, bro." There is much intellect here, but not so much forethought. My friend John said that sometimes you meet people who are so arrogant that you can tell they've never been punched when they deserved it. A good shot in the face will help anyone regain a bit of humility and remember they're not always the smartest person in the room. So I'm going to read this as we're having a beautiful moment right now. We're really embracing, like the Barbie movie, I think did a lot to like really embrace like what it is to be a woman today, to really kind of make people feel like they're not alone.
Yeah.
The star is that, you know, this is beauty, this is hope, we're enjoying the moment, but it's kind of still the beginning. And a reminder that we have to, you know, deal with the arrogant guy who thinks he knows it all because he's a guy, and we just have to be like, nope, you don't. Constant reminder. So it's still a constant battle and journey, but there's hope. So 2024 sounds like it's moving in the right direction.
That sounds good to me.
Cool.
I like it. I like it.
Thank you. All right. Oh, Wheel of Fate, what do you have in store for us for next week?
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Are you really sure?
Do it.
I'm trying to buy time because I can't get it to pop up. I usually had it open. There it goes. All right. Here we go. Next week, we're going to be talking cults.
Oh. I really thought it was going to be they don't teach that in school.
I know. Well, they don't teach cults in school either, so that's fair.
They don't.
So join us next week for our very culty episode. I do enjoy those. I like a good culty cult. There's so many good culty cults. All right. So until next time, when we shall be bringing you culty cults and all the culty ways you can be culty. You can find us in all the things and at all the places at
Brunch and Judge.
Please follow, comment, like, subscribe, share with your friends. And you can send us any topics for our wheel or any stories you'd like for us to cover to us at
brunchandjudge@gmail.com.
So until next time, keep on brunching.
And keep on judging.
Bye.
Bye.